Boom. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome everybody to another great conversation. Always special, but sometimes I get a little bit extra excited, and this is one of those times. So today we're going to have a great conversation with Nathan Mallipeddi, and we'll talk about how we met.
Good morning. Welcome.
I'm getting feedback. There we go. Yeah, so we're going to talk about how we met. We'll talk about Nathan growing up and what he's been through and what he's done in his life so far, and then some really exciting stuff that this guy is up to with Southern California Stuttering service and just amazing things. So I'll do the bio and everything, but I just want to make a quick shout out. Stick around to the end of our conversation. There's going to be some really great, exciting announcement at the end. But for the front side, I just want to say this is one in a series of amazing conversations that I've been privileged to share with some of my friends, some of my mentors, some of my heroes, and it's been amazing. And this is just the beginning. So if you want to see what's coming up, if you go to schneiderspeech.com/events, you can see the lineup. We've got an exciting lineup. We'll be interrupted, taking a break for the high holidays. I'm going to be observing the Jewish New Year, but aside from that, before and after that, we've got an amazing lineup for September and October, touching November already. But Nathan and I share one of our best favorite people on the planet. Katie Gore and I are going to be having a great conversation on Monday, and then I'm going down under, going down to Richard Stevens down in Say, Australia, and we'll have a great conversation on Thursday. So check out the calendar; you'll see lots of great stuff. And if you want to see the previous replays, you can go to schneiderspeech.com/our-blog. And on the blog page, you'll see most, if not all of them. And of course, you can see it here on Facebook Live. And without further ado, good morning, Nathan. Let me give you an introduction, and then you can do your own. But Nathan is coming at us live from California. Nathan graduated summa cum laude with honors from UCLA in June. Congratulations, virtual.
Thank you.
Congratulations. I was hoping you were going to wear your cap and gown, but
I actually don't have one because I never had the graduation. So
I'm gonna get you one. I'm gonna get you one. But yours would have a lot more stripes and tassels than mine ever did. Everybody, check this out. Nathan would never tell you this, but he has BS, and that's not what it sounds like. That's a bachelor's in science and biology. A BA in political science. He's a Phi Beta Kappa, junior elect to Phi Beta Kappa. He's a Fulbright Scholar. He's the founder and CEO of the Southern California Stuttering Service. It's a nonprofit organization tackling the critical issue of speech therapy regarding the lack of access for low-income communities. He is involved in a ton of things with leadership, with international speech disability awareness organizations. He's done cell biology research, public policy research at UCLA, at the Geffen School of Medicine, and the Luskin School of Public Affairs, published in journals. He's a senior policy intern at the City of Los Angeles Department on Disability, and he is involved in transformative public policy initiatives that are creating jobs for thousands of unemployed or homeless people with disabilities in Los Angeles. This guy is a superstar. He's shining bright today, and he is the promise of tomorrow. He aspires to be a career as a physician, researcher, policymaker. I know only a few people in that category. He's going to work on focusing on improving the quality of care and reducing the disparity for disabled people in healthcare systems, and attend medical school next year to pursue his medical degree together with a master's in business administration at Stanford Graduate School of Business. I am in with respect, and I'm humbled to be with you, Nathan. Thanks for taking a few minutes to talk together.
Of course, I'm looking forward to it.
So that's the official intro, and it's a mouthful. For those of you that don't know, Nathan is a pretty tall guy. So just to share a little backstory, and then I'll let Nathan introduce what he thinks is important to know about him. Last year, we were in Fort Lauderdale together. It was hot. It was humid. As I said, he just graduated, so I don't think he's legal to drink beer. So we had a coffee at the Hotel Starbucks with our other good friend, Tiffany. I remember it like it was yesterday. And yeah, we broke halva together. I brought some halva. We had some halva. We had some coffee. If you remember the flavored cinnamon halva, that was the flavor. And then we had whiskey halva. Good stuff. And the coffee wasn't bad. Coffee wasn't bad. There was a blackout in the hotel. I think they were giving it out for free, or that was the next day and they were charging again. It was a bizarre thing. And then later that day, I come out of my room sporting shorts, t-shirt, and sneakers, going to play basketball with my favorite baller, Sadiq. And I'd say, Nathan, hey, listen, it's a blackout. There's no air conditioning. Let's go play ball. And I just wonder what you were thinking when I came over to you and invited you to play ball.
I was down. I love playing sports. Basketball is one of my favorite sports, and I had, even though it was, one conversation, prior to that, I felt like I had gotten to know you, as well as you could have in one conversation, and so, I was down. Not gonna lie, I was a little unsure because you told me a little bit earlier that you were also father of a few kids, so I wasn't sure.
You don't want me to have a heart attack.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't, but LeBron also has 3 kids, and so you never know, right? So
Listen, LeBron and I have a lot in common. I have 4, he has 3, so we both have that in common, that we have 3+ kids. Yeah. We're both balding. Talked about that. Scott Yaris is my mentor. You are giving me a little bit of a hard time with the balding over there, but I sized you up, man. Look, you were tall, and I don't look up to everybody. I'm about 6'1". I look up to you physically, but man, you were like, you had like the Ivy League, like beige shorts and like the tucked in polo and like Argyle tie going. And then you had these boating shoes you were wearing. And I was like, listen, I may be a dad of 4. I may be whatever age I am, but I could take this guy. This is not going to be a problem. Let's just say Nate came to play. That's all I'm going to say. Nate came to play with the boating shoes and all. Yeah, wipe the floor with me. So,
I don't think it was wipe the floor. I think it was pretty close. But it was.
I think I was wiping the floor like this in respect.
Like that. But all I remember.
Inside and outside, you were sharp. Inside and outside. Physically and basketball-wise, and also metaphorically. Yeah.
I just remember it being unbearably humid for a spoiled Cali kid like myself.
Yes. Yeah. Well, your bio is hardly a story of a spoiled guy. You're a go-getter and you're a hard worker and you've contributed a ton. So yeah, tell us what you think is important to know about you. Who are you? What are you most proud of? What are you most excited about?
Yeah. So maybe I'll start by talking a little bit about like growing up with a stutter, right? That's where it all starts for a lot of us who are involved in the stuttering community. So I started stuttering when I was well, pretty much as soon as I could talk, as is a common theme for many kids who stutter. They talk later. I read an article saying that there was an association with that. So, but I really didn't, start realizing it until the end of elementary school, beginning middle school. And it was pretty bad, right? Pretty severe, just like, a lot of people. Hard to tell now because, it's more mild, but back then it was pretty severe. And I have a very similar story to like many people who stutter. The social isolation, how hard it was to make friends, all that kind of stuff. I'm lucky to come from a very supporting family. There's a lot of people who stutter that I personally feel like get overlooked where they stutter, but they are also struggling to put food on the table, to have a roof over their heads. And so stuttering may not be the biggest issue in their life, to be completely honest. For me, it was. And, the kind of interesting thing about my stuttering is the cultural thing, because my parents are immigrants from India. My dad came in the 80s for undergrad, went to LSU, My mother's a physician, and she came here in the 90s, and so there's a large generation gap there in terms of culturally. So my dad stutters, but growing up in a village in India, and when I say village, it was literally a village in India.
Like it was almost not a village.
It
That's
was,
how much of a village it was. It was like almost didn't hit the criteria for village.
yeah, it was, rural India in the South, my dad and his ability to go from there, and he's the epitome of the American dream, right? The land of opportunity and hope. He came here with like no money, and he provided to, reach that middle class that I was born into, and I'm forever grateful for. But
Tell a little bit more about his story. So he comes as a young guy born in India from a very small village, comes here to college alone, or he came with a family. Like what's his, and how he kind of persevered, I think is really interesting as also a bit of a prototype or an example of how the next generation, I just make a side comment.
Sure.
I don't have a PhD. A lot of people love to like introduce me and be like, oh, Dr. Sean. I'm like, no, that's my dad. So I have not gotten my PhD, but if I did, I would be fascinated. Not as much. There are a lot of great people doing awesome research, and they'll be on these conversations about genetics. And we'll have Dr. Jerry Maguire and Shelley Jo Kraft to talk about that. They are the leaders in that. But I think as important as it is to look at the genetic predisposition, I think there's a tremendously interesting and fascinating pattern when you look at families that have stuttering in the family, and many families do and others don't. It's less of a prognostic indicator. So if you have a family history, you shouldn't think that the prognosis is X or Y. Everyone has a chance to really make it and thrive and be everything they wish to be. In some cases, when there's stuttering in the family, I'm super interested in seeing if we can leverage how did that previous generation cope, adapt, deal with, respond to the challenge, to the opportunity. And so I'm interested in your case, being who you are and how much I admire you, a little bit about your dad and how did he kind of cope and adapt? What was his story?
Yeah. So for someone who had close to nothing and then like left India to come here, I can be safe to say that like stuttering was not the first thing on his mind, and so it was a little bit different because for me it was growing up, the first thing I thought about, the last thing I thought about like during the day. So for him, he came here undergrad, worked his way. He had like some family here. He had an aunt in Ohio, and so he stayed with them for a little bit before getting accepted to LSU. He would actually tell some stories. So he had a stutter, but he also had a very thick English. I'm sorry, a thick accent, right?
It wouldn't be right if I did. Can you give us a sample? Like
I'm not good at all. I'm not
but
good.
You could try. You can get away with it. Come on.
No, I can't at all.
I love it. I love the Indian accent. There's a company that I have a subscription with. They're called Fresh Sales. If anyone's interested, they're a great company. They run a CRM and they have a full suite of options. And they're out of India and they're scrappy, and Google's invested in them and they're just awesome. What's amazing is you can just get on the phone with them. And like the first time I spoke to them, it took me a bit to kind of hook into the pronunciation and the accent and the dialects. But once you hook in, I could be on the phone with these people all day long. It's music to my ears. I love it.
Yeah.
But Nathan's dad is going to have to wait for the next conversation. We're not going to get an impression right now.
Yeah. Anyways, so he would tell stories.
So go ahead, his stories.
Yeah, thick accent, and he made a lot of, or it took him some time to make some friends, obviously. And the first friends he made in LSU was actually the African American community, and that's actually kind of crosses over, to why, I'm very, passionate about what's going on in the world right now with Black Lives Matter, all that stuff, because they, with my own dad, this guy, his name is Thomas Robinson. He's he worked at Taco Bell with my dad, and my dad didn't have a place to go to for Thanksgiving and Christmas. He brought him over. His mom accepted him. Foreign student with an accent. I mean, it's just a small story about he would spend every year at their house. Just small story of just the beauty of like humanity, right? Like just beyond the stuttering, beyond all that. And yeah, so after he kind of went through that, majored in computer science, he went back to India, married my mother, so arranged marriage. I'm a product of an arranged marriage. And then
we'll talk about that later. Arranged marriage. See, that's where the Indian thing and the Jewish thing.
Yeah. And then he, worked his way up and came out to California, and that's where I've been ever since. So, what I was mentioning earlier that's very interesting is his stuttering, right? There's a cultural kind of stigma with stuttering in India that's even like more pronounced than it is here.
Just a quick reference, like fascinating how there are different stigmas and different thoughts and beliefs about stuttering and people who stutter and what it emanates from and what is the cure in different parts of the world. So very interesting. So what was it like in India?
Yeah.
What was the
So this is a generalization, but generally Eastern Hemisphere countries tend to have a more communal structure, right? A family structure. And so, the United States is very individualized, right? Like when you go and fight for your success. In India, if you have a fault, and something like stuttering back then and even now is like seen as a fault, it looks bad on your whole family, right? The family, the Mallipeddis with that kid who stutters, right? Is basically what it is. And so his parents would like tell him to stop stuttering, right? Like things like that. A tamer version, but basically the reason why I brought that up is because when I was talking about my childhood, even though I lived in or I grew up in like Silicon Valley, which is among the most like liberal places in the US, there's this interesting dichotomy where in my own household, I still have these strong conservative values where my parents growing up would often be like, right, like stop stuttering, like it looks bad, right? Along those lines. And so that was a big part of my own story.
what did your dad do? What did he end up doing? What was his work?
Oh, he's a computer scientist. He was working he's working at Adobe software. So yeah, respect my dad from, American dream, right? Like, the bottom to making it, which is, amazing. But, this thing about stuttering, I was really hoping, if the conference happened this year, it would be the first time he actually agreed to come to the NSA conference, because it was going to be at Newport Beach, right? So
yeah,
he said he'd come. So I wanted him to see the acceptance side of things, because I found the NSA when I was searching up stuttering my freshman year of college.
NSA, the National Stuttering Association, for anyone that's interested. That was the conference where we met last year and what Nathan was referring to.
Yeah, and so before that, I had never heard of acceptance of stuttering. I was just kind of battling through it myself. But once hearing about the NSA, it was this whole other side, right? And so for me, my so I, the only like speech therapy I received, anything related to stuttering, was the public school speech therapist, and they were great. But in early on elementary school, middle school, my stuttering got worse, and even early on in high school, it was more like, a small thing where the like office like messenger, there's a student volunteer, and they'll walk in, and then the whole class like knows that I'm leaving for speech therapy, right? That's a very underestimated part of someone who had like never like known about the benefits of like stuttering therapy, acceptance therapy, and so it was very like lonely in that sense, if that that makes sense.
What
But
years are you thinking about that you're talking about that?
I'm thinking about high school, early on in high school. So I was a big covert stutterer. Even now, I'm a big covert stutterer, but my stutter has gotten a bit more mild. I know some of that has to do with acceptance. When talking to Dr. Yaris, hearing him on your Facebook Live a couple weeks ago, I know there's this whole idea about acceptance and the psychological epigenetic aspect to stuttering. I expect that some of my improvements were because of that, but it wasn't like something I did intentionally. I would practice and practice, but once I really started gaining confidence and putting myself out there more, my stuttering actually improved, and I was lucky.
I want to hit the rewind button for a second, Nathan, because I'm thinking of a particular family, Indian family, that we know very well, and their teenage son is having a really hard time. He has a really good stutter, like a really strong and present stutter. He couldn't hide it if he wanted to, put it that way. And his mom and dad are super dedicated, super loving, sound very similar to your parents, first generation Indians living in America, and just the most upstanding people you can imagine. And with all the great love and best intentions, there's this tension that they have, that they're so worried about their son and how is he going to make it. And a picture of him in 9th, 10th, 11th grade, the concern of how does that teenager with such a strong stutter, how's he going to make it? And I think, Nathan, you have the opportunity, and I'm interested if you could, you're a project in motion. You're far from the prime. Talk about LeBron and the GOAT. You are just getting warmed up, as I described in the description. But looking at you today, many people could say, wow, I would say Nathan is a pretty good example, a pretty good role model, something that I would hope my teenage kids would look at him as a good example of someone who's really contributing to the world and rising and applying himself. Roll back the tape to you in high school. What did it look like, and how did you kind of get from there to here, with having in mind some of the young people or parents or speech therapists that might be thinking about a 9th, 10th grader who's having a pretty wicked time and worrying about the future? Like, can you give us a bit of a sense of like, how wicked was it? How lonely was it? What was that like? And then if you drew the course till now, is it a straight line or kind of like interesting twists and turns?
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. So, I feel for the Indian boy or teenager, because, as you said, it sounds a lot like my experience. So I'll talk a little bit about Indian culture before answering your question.
You could talk about Indian culture all day long.
Yeah. So there's this like stigma for people like my parents, for that Indian teenager's parents, when they come from India. That's a huge risk, right? They're upending their whole life, and psychologically, when you take that risk, and there's research that shows this, when you take that risk, you are much more likely to be risk averse in the future, because you believe that, oh, like my luck is like set, right? It's not like a set in stone thing, but it's very subconscious, basically, right? And so that's why Indian parents here in America are very, very concerned about every detail about their children's like success, right? That's where a lot of that pressure comes from, because they feel like, again, subconsciously, that it takes a lot of skill, but also a lot of luck to be able to come from here to here. And so they want to make sure that their kids do okay, right? And that's a cultural thing. And then when you have something like stuttering, it seems like communication, that's the bedrock of like success, right? Because you need people to do well, right? There's like when you look at, you were reading off the bio, and I was like, oh wow, that actually sounds pretty good. But
I'd like to meet that guy.
Right. I was like, I'd like to meet that guy. But every single one of those experiences was a mentor or other people who believed in me, right?
Someone believed in you. Someone opened a door for you. That resonates with what Tom talked about on his job in a construction business. That resonates with what Carl Coffey talked about. And it resonates with what Braden Harrington talked about. You know, someone further along in the journey showing faith in you, giving you a feeling like you're worth it, and
Exactly.
opening a door for you, being a champion for you. So I think for those of us that are adults, parents, therapists, citizens, think of someone who could use a champion. And as we start the school year, that couldn't be more important. I'm done. Go back.
There is, oh no, when you're talking about that, I was actually reading another study yesterday by a Harvard group that said every child on this planet is estimated to be one caring adult away from.
I know the talk you're talking about. If anyone wants to Google it, look up, what is it called? Marbles?
Have to, I just like came across it. And
I'll post it later. It's so funny you mentioned it because I have a collection of things I want to share for the start of the school year. But this guy was a kid, was a person, he's a motivational speaker, and he bounced around in foster homes his whole life. And then finally there was one family that he couldn't manage to get them to kick him out.
Right.
But he got into big trouble. And I'll summarize the story because it's really awesome. He tried to be as obnoxious as he could. He kept a journal of how he got kicked out of every single foster home because he felt so unlovable. The worst thing would be to become loved. Like that would be terrible because he doesn't know what that feels like. That'd be so vulnerable. So he just tried to be a bad kid. And most bad kids are just scared because they don't know how to be lovable and loved and don't believe they can be loved. And so better to be bad than stupid, better to be bad than dumb. So the story goes that he gets there and he does everything he can to get kicked out of the house, and he can't do it. And it's he felt so unlovable. The worst thing would be to become loved. Like that would be scary. Now I'm hearing myself.
I'm sorry.
All good. No, we're like intelligent guys, but we're technologically challenged. That's fine. So the story is really good. I'm sorry to digress. It's an amazing story. He says Rodney, this guy that was his foster father, wouldn't kick him out. And this guy had a record. Like it would only take maximum 2 weeks for the foster family to say, this kid is a handful, we're out of here. It's 2 years later, the kid gets his driver's license and he forges checks. He starts writing checks all over the place. And one of the checks that he writes is for the car insurance or the registration. And it's some country, like it's some state like Montana or something like that. And so it bounces. So he doesn't really have a good registration or a good insurance on the car. He gets pulled over at night. License and registration, cop sees that the registration is not good, bounce check, puts him in jail. So now the kid is like, oh man, I'm in jail. I get one phone call, I call Rodney, wake him up, say, hey Rodney, can you come bail me out? And Rodney says, who is this? oh, it's you, sure. Yeah, not now, but I'll come in the morning. Kid's like, no, and he hangs up. So the kid spends the night in jail. And then the next morning he's waiting for Rodney to come pick him up. And it's a long time. And Rodney shows up and he's waiting for this awkward talk because he knows he's been waiting 2 years for Rodney to blow it, and write him off and send him out of the house. And it was a long, quiet ride from the jailhouse back to the house in Montana, wherever it was. And then Rodney sits him down in the kitchen with the foster mom, Rodney's wife. And Rodney says, how long is it going to take for you to get through your thick skull that we don't look at you as a failure? We look at you and we see an opportunity. He said, I didn't pick you up last night because I wanted you to learn how to spend the night thinking about the consequences of your actions, of the choices that you make. And at that moment, the kid said that was about the cheesiest thing you could say to a 17-year-old kid who's about to turn 18. He was like 3 weeks from his 18th birthday. He said, but even for him, a tough, angry, bruised 17-year-old kid turning 18 almost, it touched his heart that Rodney was unshakable in his belief, in his alliance, in his championing this young man. And this young man then takes out a box of marbles, a jar of marbles, and he says, this is the number of marbles in the life of a kid from the time they're born until they're 18, the number of weeks, one marble for every week. These are the number of marbles that are left when the child is 13 years old. These are the number of marbles left, the number of weeks till when they're 16, till they turn 18. Because when they turn 18, they're an independent adult. they can vote. They can't drink yet, technically, but they could vote. So, so the point was, at the time he got arrested, there were like 6 marbles left. There were like 6 weeks till his 18th birthday when Rodney would have had no influence on him. And the point is that as long as you got 1 marble, just 1, as long as you have today, you can still make an impact and really, change someone's life. And this young man went from there to becoming a motivational speaker for young people. So if you check it out, I'll put the link in this, but how'd I do, Nate?
Oh, that was a beautiful summary.
It's one of 4 videos that I recommend for all teachers to watch at the beginning of the school year.
It's amazing. And it's that story. So I listened to a part of the speech, and then I read an article about it. And the story is just exactly what I think of in terms of when you think about the stuttering community, right? Like every kid who stutters, and there's millions that are not really involved in these communities, and they feel alone, and each one is one person away from doing big things and
that's right,
and unleashing their potential. But yeah, so I think we digressed from me talking about the high school stuff.
Conversations.
That's
right on it. So yeah, so you talked about that every opportunity on your resume is less of something that you take pride and expect people to worship you for, but more things you see as opportunities that someone believed in you, and each of them was a pivotal part of your journey. I think that's where we digressed from.
Yeah, exactly. It's people who believed in me, and that's the first thing, the mentors. And 2, it was really this attitude that I honestly, if not 100, like 99% attribute to my stuttering. And what that attitude is a lot of people who grow up, a middle class like myself, they are, drawn toward, okay, we have a secure base, let's try to shoot for success, right? And unfortunately in high school, for many people, success, what does that mean? It means prestige, right? It means prestige in universities, right? Going to the top schools. It means prestige in jobs, right? And those sorts of things. And for me, it was never about the prestige, right? It was about, so Kobe Bryant, RIP, is one of my, heroes. I read his works, listened to his. Yeah, he talks about, early on in his career, he was trying to be the best. And it wasn't until later he had this huge transformation where he was like, I realized I was actually pursuing this like finite like goal. Like no one knows who's the best, right? People are gonna argue, right? Like, and then that's when he switched his mind to the infinite goal of inspiring the next generation of athletes or of people. And that's where he left his mark. And that's what I learned early on. That's where a person can really leave their mark, pursuing the infinite goal of making impact on people's lives. And I've always had that for as long as I can remember. It's something that I couldn't put into words, before that, I can now, but that innate desire to help people, I feel like is in a lot of people who stutter, right? And I
saw what you did there. Innate, that was very good. Nate, Nathan, innate, that was good.
Yeah. It's in
a lot of people who stutter, the desire to impact and open doors for others and be a champion for others because of the experience of being on the other side of feeling
exactly if it's
things
not
are stacked
already,
against.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If it's not already there, it's in its early stages where these people are being humbled, right? Because stuttering humbles you, makes you feel alone. You know what it's like to have this invisible disability, right? Where it's a very unique impairment, because when most people who stutter are early on are covert, and so when they mess up, mess up when they stutter, right? Their friends will automatically attribute it to their intellect or their character, right? And these experiences every day for years, I think, I can speak for myself, but, a lot of people who stutter have shared similar experiences. So I believe it's more the majority than the minority. It tells people who stutter that people can be going through obstacles that are not visible. And it doesn't have to be a disability. It can be someone who's like struggling with their financial situation, somebody who faces discrimination because of their race, right? And then for me, it was like, okay, let's go back to that. Every individual on this planet, let's go bigger, is one caring person away from succeeding. And so that's where I got my mentality growing up. I couldn't be as eloquent about it back then, but that's where it came from. And for that teenage boy, if I would tell him something, I would just say his stuttering doesn't define him, right? Even if you want it to define you, it growing up, it was my biggest weakness, and now it's my biggest strength, right? Because I've met some people who stutter. I've had these opportunities open up because I am a person who stutters, right? And so, I know how hard it is to be in a family where, maybe stuttering is, this huge cultural stigma, but I would also tell them there are advantages to being a person who stutters, and I would encourage him to really seek those advantages, because he has a unique story that I mean, now the whole nation is in awe of people like Braden Harrington, people like Joe Biden, who have gone through these things, right? I mean, it really outputs tremendous people. And I'm sorry for going on and on. I can talk about
Nate, that's why we're here. Carved out this time to listen to your story. This is the conversation we need to have. So the statistic, and I riffed when Nate was quoting that Harvard study was saying that when you take kids, that their trajectory is crime, suicide, jail. What makes the difference? What's that X factor that changes the trajectory of a life of a kid who has all the odds stacked against them? The difference is one caring adult, that one teacher, that one uncle, that one friend, that one parent, that one neighbor, that one whatever. That just is a one caring adult. And it can be anybody, and it can be in such a small, subtle way, but being a consistent champion of a person and giving them the belief in themselves they might not have for themselves yet. You hold that candle, you hold that light for them, and eventually they take it and they run with it. So do you remember a time, Nate, when you didn't yet see it as you didn't connect to this mission of making an impact and opening doors for others? Do you remember what age that shift happened for you, where it was kind of like a solitary, lonely, heavy kind of experience? What age was that? And then at what age does it start to shift for you? Roughly?
Yeah, around high school, I think. So, elementary school, middle school, it was really that solitary, lonely experience. Maybe around my, early on high school, like freshman, sophomore year, it really transformed, where I was like, I've always wanted to help people, but I didn't understand how or why, right? And it was then high school, and especially when I started applying to thinking about college my junior year, right? It was like, where do I want to be? What do I want to do? That's a lot of reflection that many high school students think about. And that's when I really, reflected on that.
Wow. So what are you doing in terms of your activities? You have a lot of volunteer activities.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing with some of the sense of purpose and mission to really open doors for others? I think that transitions into some of the volunteer work. For anyone chiming in now, in case you just woke up, it's early on the West Coast, 7 a.m. On the East Coast, it's 10 a.m. It's a great conversation with my good friend Nathan Mallipeddi. I won't repeat his entire bio, but it only scratches the surface of what an extraordinary young man he is. And he's just warming up, but he's accomplished already a lot of impact. A lot of impact, and we'll hear more about that. But if you have comments or questions, just comment below. If you want to help Nathan's voice be heard, share like crazy, share to your feed, share to groups. And if you're watching this or getting a piece of it, or you're worried you can't stay till the end, there's going to be something good at the end. You could always watch the playback on the Facebook Live at Schneider Speech, or you can go to our website, schneiderspeech.com/our-blog. The blog page will have all these, up shortly, as well as other conversations. So yeah, what are you doing with your mission that you feel like you said stuttering was something that made you feel very lonely.
Mm-hmm.
It was a weakness, it was a challenge, it was a burden. And now you look at it as your greatest strength,
Mm-hmm.
and you feel like it is a gift that kind of enabled you to feel a drive to
Mm-hmm.
champion for others, open doors for others. So what are you doing with that? Because you seem pretty busy at school.
Yeah, so I just graduated, which was amazing. So I'll start with the local, right, and then we'll kind of expand.
We'll go galactic from there.
Yeah.
Ruben Schuff is going to help us put you on a rocket ship. You're going to open the first stuttering center for people on Mars.
That's funny. In college, I got really involved with the city of LA Department on Disability. And what I think is important for anyone who stutters, I really encourage them, people involved in the stuttering community, maybe get a little bit involved, dip your toe with the general disability community, because there's a lot of differences, right? A lot of unique insights, working with other disabilities, but also a lot of parallels as well. And so one thing I'll mention that we're actually doing right now because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm a policy intern, and it's a small department. And this is again another example of a director who believed in me. I was a college student, reached out to him junior year. His name's Mr. Steven Simon. He runs the department on disability. He believed that I could be someone who really help them. And so he gave me a lot of responsibility. And so right now, for example, everyone talks about California's problem with homelessness, right? So Los Angeles, there's, I think, about 150,000 people who are homeless. And about half of them, research shows, has a disability. And so for those who aren't familiar with entitlement programs, basically the Social Security Agency offers resources to not only the elderly, but the disabled. And so, half this community is eligible for these resources, and they're just disabled in a variety of ways. A lot of them are veterans with PTSD or impaired limbs. But people who are homeless really don't have the resources to push through the bureaucracy that is getting access to those funds in entitlement programs. And so
there are a lot of barriers. So there are resources out there, there are programs that exist, but sometimes the distance between where that person's at, their know-how, their ability to tap into that, sometimes there's a distance that needs to be covered to enable them to take advantage.
Exactly. And so the goal of the clinic that we're creating right now is to basically bring physicians, disability evaluation analysts, Social Security agents, and a variety of people into one van, and we're going to these homeless communities, and we're telling them, what do you need, here's what you need so you can get that money. And the reason why I like that initiative, it's just one example of the sort of things that we do, is because it really shows a problem that people don't realize, right? People think, oh, like Social Security is there, people have access. But,
right.
When you really dive into it, there are issues that are going on every day. And this is an issue that no one was really tackling. And so our department really made an effort to really help people in light of the COVID pandemic. And you know,
So
that's
bringing it, it's like the ultimate bringing it to people and meeting them where they're at.
exactly.
So sometimes sometimes you bring the horse to the water, and sometimes you gotta bring the water to the horse. So people sometimes feel like, hey, why didn't so-and-so take advantage of this? Or why didn't so-and-so avail themselves to this? And sometimes we don't realize there are any number of reasons why that was too much. And so I think it's a good bridge also to what you're doing with the stuttering community.
Mm,
Southern California stuttering um, project to bring same idea, right? People have a
mm.
distance that they can't access the kind of things that would be most helpful to them, perhaps. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing there, how it's evolved.
Yeah. So the idea really grew from my own personal experience with speech therapy. So I mentioned the cultural stigma against stuttering. My parents didn't necessarily I wouldn't say it was all the cultural stigma, but they also weren't aware of the stuttering speech therapists, the fluency specialist speech therapists, and those opportunities. And so the only speech therapy I got was that in public schools, and the speech therapists were amazing people. I'll send them an email, ask them how they're doing, but they really didn't have the experience in stuttering, and as I'm sure most speech therapists would agree, it's not really taught, right? Um, which is honestly crazy to me because 5% of all children stutter, right? Not even people in these special education classes. 5% of all children stutter. That's just amazing to me. But people like John Gomez who are like starting to bring in stuttering into these speech therapists like in classrooms. I only mention him because he's out in LA, so I have a bias. But
Well,
everybody.
he's definitely our favorite male film producing, LA rocking speech therapist. There's a very few people that fit that bill. So shout out. I know he's watching this live or later, and I expect him to put a comment 100%.
Yeah, he was nice. Or last year I spoke to his class, and so he was nice to invite me to do that. But
Awesome.
anyways, so
So the distance, you're saying that you're highlighting something that a lot of people know, but some people may not know, is that the same way not every physician is trained to be a cardiologist, not every speech therapist is equally trained or sufficiently trained to be clinically competent in every single thing in our scope of practice. So speech therapy is a very broad thing. People think of lisps, people think of voice problems people might not know, but in hospitals, speech therapists can help people with swallowing. People can help people after a stroke or traumatic brain injury recover language and ways to communicate, working with kids who are living with autism or other different communication challenges. Stuttering is one of many. And so, as with all of these things, not every speech therapist is even competent with any one of them. And stuttering is one where you've got a lot of kids in school with a lot of publicly funded speech therapists in the school or in local clinics. And it doesn't mean that that speech therapist has ever helped a child who stutters. And so even as great, credentialed professionals and caring professionals, there is a challenge in our profession. How do we raise the level of competence? But the current state of affairs is if you're a parent or a person looking for help, it's important that whatever you're looking for, don't just look for the title of the profession. That's just a starting point. After you know the person is a credentialed professional, make sure they have sufficient experience, helping people with the specific issue you're looking for at the specific age that you're looking for. And that's true for any self-advocacy in looking for professional help.
Yeah.
That's the alley-oop.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Obviously, like Yuri is one of the best, and so thank you for that explanation. So the other side of it of why I was thinking about starting this organization is because so what's the alternative, right? What do parents have to do? And the answer is most of them reach out to these, fluency specialist speech therapists who are amazing all over the country. I know a lot of them. A lot of them are, affiliated or involved with the NSA. And Um,
And I'm just going to stretch that out there. The Stuttering Foundation of America is an amazing resource and has a list of therapists that they include. So if you're looking for someone that knows something about stuttering, that's a good place to start. The National Stuttering Association is another amazing address and resource. And then there's the board recognized specialty for fluency. You can also look at their website if you're looking for consumer information. So there's a great network of people, but not enough. Not every city, not every state has enough people to serve all the kids who stutter.
Yeah, exactly. And so from my understanding, I believe that most of these specialists are in private practice, right? Just with how, the field of speech therapy works. And so what ends up happening is, to get that specialized therapy, people who stutter, these are conservative numbers, but, let's say about $200 for an evaluation and $150 per session, right? But it could be much
That's a
higher.
lot of money. Not
Yeah,
everybody can afford that.
exactly, and that comes out to around 10 grand per year, right? Depending how many sessions. But there's a lot of people out there from marginalized, low-income communities who can't afford that, as you mentioned. And so the goal of the organization was, as I've spoken with you about, as I mentioned this to you, I can't remember the exact age, like 17 or 18. I'm 21 now, and I started a few years ago.
Oh, you're 21.
Yeah.
You're legal. Amazing.
I turned 21 after I met you, so yeah,
Well,
last year.
okay, so we'll take a rain check, a beer check. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I was really surprised that, there wasn't an organization that was solely dedicated to, connecting low income families with like speech therapists to receive effective stuttering speech therapy, right? Like fluency specialist speech therapy. There's a lot of groups out there that are providing the services and doing what they can to lower their costs, right? Which is fair, but these speech therapists, amazing people, you don't go into speech therapy if you want to make money. That's just not how it is, right? They go.
I don't recommend it. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to make $1 million, if you want to make the American dream, your dad didn't become a speech therapist.
Exactly. But, they're doing it because they want to help people. But at the same time, they got to put a roof over, their head, right? They got to feed their family. And so it's a tricky situation where these speech therapists have to choose between the ethical dilemma of, do I lower my costs to like help these people, or do I, not, in order to like support myself? And I feel like speech therapists should not be put in that situation. And so the goal of Southern California Stuttering Service was, okay, we'll be an organization that is like solely dedicated to managing the framework of connecting low income communities with effective, high quality, they're, among the best of the best fluency specialists, speech therapists. That way the therapists don't have to worry about lowering their costs so that, they can't sustain their practice and the clients can still receive the support. So you can think of it as building a bridge, right? And it's a very simple idea, but when I joined the stuttering community, I looked left, looked right, and nobody was doing it. And so our first year, it was just me and a couple people I knew at UCLA.
Just a bunch of kids.
A bunch of kids, yeah, 18, 19-year-olds, and we helped 3 clients, and we partnered with 1 speech therapist, and the average cost was, we went down from the 10K to about 4,000, right? Because what you find is that people, speech therapists, want to help, right? Surprising? No, it's not surprising because this is what they want to do, right? And then the second year, we brought on Katie Gore, who you mentioned earlier, who's amazing, entrepreneurial spirit,
Tune in on Monday. Tune in on Monday. Yeah.
Okay.
Katie Gore conversation live. Yes.
Yeah, it just, amazing in every way. And she helped to continue forming those connections. And, to be fair, because I was working in the space for
Well,
like no
give
one
us
else.
the numbers. Give
Yeah,
us the numbers. So in the
sure.
first year, you helped change the lives of 4 young people who
Mhm.
stutter, and you were just like 18, 19 years old. What happened the next year?
Next year, it was up to 10. And it was about
10 lives.
mhm.
10. Wow.
And it was about 2,000 per client. And so,
So you're impacting more lives and you're cutting the cost per kid because you're having these partnerships with different therapists around the country that are good partners, that are top level professionals, but they're partnering with you so that you can provide some funding to cover the gap between what the family can afford, which is low income families. It could be very little. You told me there were families, we're talking about families that can't afford like the bus fare to get from
exactly.
their home to the office of this person.
Yeah.
Some of them don't have access to internet. These are the families we're talking about changing lives, opening doors. Just one caring adult or one caring almost adult, that'd be you, changing the lives of these kids. And what's amazing is you're reaching more kids. In year 1, it was 4 kids. Year 2, it was 10 kids. And you cut the costs by partnering with people who care. So you're getting top level care, like premium level care, specialist level care for people, families, kids that wouldn't otherwise have access. And you're reducing the cost by partnering with these therapists who are themselves reducing cost, and you're finding the funding. So that's incredible. So what happened next?
Yeah, so right now we are starting to get some traction. Obviously the impact is there, and the model is there. I've been growing it slowly because I know I don't have a lot of experience building organizations, so I've been focused on bringing the right.
You won't be able to say that for long, Nathan.
To advise me, and so. Now I think we're ready to go to the next level, and so next year I'm hoping to bring on 10 more clients.
And so that would be a total of 10 or a total of 20.
So that'll be a 10 more, and so a total of 20. Yeah.
So from 4 young people in year 1, total cost average per person to do that, to make that opportunity available, required fundraising $3,000 per kid. Year 2, you help 10 kids, $4,000 per child. And then in year 2, you're helped 10 young people who stutter from these very low income, underserved areas. And you helped more kids. And in doing so, partnering in the right way, you reduce the cost per kid to have the same incredible opportunity. And now you're looking to scale another doubling, 2x of what you have, to go up to helping 20 kids this year. So we spoke about this. I'm going to just jump in. If you're listening, you know who you are. This is where you want to be if you want to make a big impact for people who are otherwise distanced from the services that are kind of existing. So it's an interesting, fresh, innovative approach that requires the mind of someone like Nate, someone who gets it from the inside, from the heart, from the soul, and has his foot in 2 worlds. On the one hand, he's dancing in Stanford and Fulbright Scholar, and on the other hand, he's connected to the story of upwardly mobile, hardworking people who came from nothing and climbed their way up. Dad who stutters, Nathan grew up stuttering, and he knows from the inside, and we heard this from the Harringtons as well, with the best intentions, not every school therapist, not every local therapist has the wherewithal, has the competence. They have credentials, but they might not have the competence to help that young person. Nate decided, while a lot of people are working on the very significant challenge, how do we increase the quality of care across the country? How do we increase the ability and the competence of the profession to really step it up in helping people who stutter? Nate's coming at it from a different way. He says, look, we've got the supply. There are great therapists out there, and finding the right ones. They have the right heart, they have the right skills, they can help these kids, they can change their lives. There's only one barrier at this point, and now that everything's virtual, it's literally one barrier. What's the barrier? It's a few bucks. It's a few bucks. And if you ask yourself, what is one life worth? When you go back to that Harvard study and you say, what's the difference between the life of the statistics going to suicide, to jail, to unemployment, to sucking on society and sucking in life? And the difference between that and someone who says, you know what, someone believed in me, someone opened the door for me. So if you have the ability to help Nathan bring this to life, you can literally change lives. And what I can attest to is, having spoken with Nathan, and I'm looking forward to potentially partnering in more official ways. Stay tuned for collabs on that. But currently I have zero interest. Currently, I have zero involvement. But I can tell you this guy is a good baller, and he's very, very trustworthy. And right now, if Nathan can raise $30,000, he's on track to be able to change the lives of 20 kids. Everything's in place with the 501c3, and he has the right partners around the country to provide these opportunities. It's just the dollars and cents. $30,000. How can people contact you, Nate?
Yeah, so if people believe in the mission and what we're doing, please go to stutteringservice.org. So stutteringservice.org, and there's a contact us tab, and you can just fill in a message and it'll go directly to our team. And kind of building off of that, it's not only the 30 grand, it's the, every child needs one caring adult to impact. In this case, people don't even have to donate their time. $2,000 can change like someone's life, right? $2,000, and I've been able to build a framework to make that happen, right? And so I really want to make it easy for people to have access to therapy that they wouldn't have, and they have no other viable alternative. So yeah, stutteringservice.org, contact us tab, just send us a message.
So I would just add to that, I would say this is epic stuff, very forward thinking, and alongside the great work that's being done by others, this is a space that is a blue ocean of opportunity, of impact, and of social good and social giving. So if you're in a position to give, if you have a way to connect, again, stutteringservice.org, and contact us tab. If you want to reach out to me at Schneider Speech, I can forward the message to Nate as well, if that's easier. But this is high impact, low overhead costs. I think if not everything is done on a volunteer basis, very few expenses that the organization has. So per dollar, the percentage of your dollar that's going to directly impacting the lives of these kids is among the best in a nonprofit situation. So I highly encourage everybody to connect with Nate. And I'll just share, that was a treat. And that's an invitation to be a partner with Nate in changing the lives of young people from underserved communities. The other opportunity, this little surprise, I'm going to say right here, launching today, open, go to our website, schneiderspeech.com. We've put together an incredible set of offerings for people at all levels of readiness in the journey and abilities in terms of finances. We're doing our part to try to, close the gap and create, a barrier-free way for people to access good stuff. This conversation is one part of that. And since June, we've had several, and we'll have several more just in the next month and a half. Everything you can get to on the homepage. So schneiderspeech.com, you'll see there's free events, these conversations. And this Sunday, we've got a parent meetup with two parents, mom and dad, of a teenage kid who's going into an elite military unit as a person who stutters. Going to be a great conversation for parents to come in. Free meetup, that's for parents. For teens, meeting up again with our good friend Cody Packer from New Zealand. He's a filmmaker. He made a film called First Day. Highly recommend you see it. It's an amazing portrayal of the lives of what many people who stutter experience when they step into the classroom and have to introduce themselves on the first day. And that is so timely in this time. The third is a meetup for adults, and we're going to be screening, a virtual screening of my dad and Justin Matley's film, Transcending Stuttering, The Inside Story. It's a 20-something minute film. I promise you won't leave with a dry eye, and there'll be a Q&A afterwards. And then, We've got an online course, which I've shared privately with many people to get their input and to refine. And you can join me as a partner in co-creating the online self-help course. So it's totally affordable. I want it to be within reach of anybody who either stutters, teens and adults who stutter, to help themselves go through an online experience on their own with a printable guide, with exercises and journaling and all kinds of additional insights that complement the video course. And then in addition to that, for those people that want more of a live, group therapy experience, we've got a 8-week sprint. We're calling it an intensive, but it's totally doable in real life. So you'll get 8 live meetups as a group for teens. There'll be a teen group, the adult group. You also get the full course, the online course of digital assets, and you also get the printable guide to kind of take your way through it. So opportunities for people who stutter have never been greater, both in terms of public access, advocacy. People like Nate are going to change the lives. You can join and partner with Nate, with us, and share the message that if you stutter, you're not alone. Organizations like National Stuttering Association, Friends Who Stutter, SSA, Stuttering Foundation of America. I hope I covered most. There are more, but thank God the world is becoming a friendlier place, and each of us can make a difference by being a champion and opening doors for other people. It just takes one caring adult, just one check, just one phone call, one message to a young person, or providing the support, the grant from behind the scenes, invisible or very visible. You can write the check and become a mentor. But the opportunity that Nathan is offering for people that have that opportunity to give is one that you will make an impact, and the cents on the dollar impact is incredible. So I invite everybody to check it out. Again, the website, stutteringservice.org. Hit the Contact Us tab, or you can send me a message at schneiderspeech.com. I'll make sure it gets to the right place. Nathan, I'm fired up. I always get fired up after I talk to you, and I am so excited, grateful that we had this conversation and others. And again, you are a shining specimen of what's possible when someone takes what they have and puts in the hard work and just sticks with it. And what's frightening is you're just getting started. It's kind of like Kobe when he came in. So I got one last question. Top player in NBA history. Go.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Don't give me the politically correct answer. I want to know, what is your answer? I want to stick the answer on the wall.
LeBron. Got to be LeBron.
Enough said. All right. Well, we'll talk about that later. But got to be like Mike, bro. It's got to be like Mike. You remember? You likened me to LeBron. I would like to think that I'm much more like Mike, because everyone knows when I play ball, when I write, I stick my tongue out all the time. So that's my affinity for Michael Jordan. Also, I didn't make the team in my freshman year. That's the other thing I have in common. Red shirt.
That's funny.
But
yeah.
We're just getting started, bro. Listen, have an amazing day. It's like 8:10 in the morning.
Yep.
Woo. Well, thanks for waking up early. And if you're watching this, share it, reach out, comment. We want to hear from you. Nathan Mallipeddi, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Have an awesome day.